Welcome to today's webcast, Hiring and Compensation Trends. Here is what you need to know in 2024. And a special thank you to today's sponsor, Robert Half. We are excited to be joined by Jamie J. Sullivan. Jamie is Executive Director of the legal practice at Robert Half, a premier talent solutions firm, an author and speaker on legal employment and practice management topics. She began her career with Robert Half in 2002 as an account executive in Columbus, Ohio. Over the years, she has held various management positions within the company and received recognition for serving on project committees, mentoring internal employees, and her leadership performance. Sullivan, who is based in Dallas, became executive director in 2016 and manages operations for the legal practice in North America. Prior to her employment with Robert Half, Sullivan worked as a law clerk at an Ohio law firm and for the Ohio State Legislature. She holds a bachelor's degree in communication from the Ohio State University and a Juris Doctor from Capital University Law School, both in Columbus, Ohio. And now I will turn the presentation over to you, Jamie. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorica, and hello, everyone. Once again, it's a pleasure to be with you today, and I thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to attend our webinar. I thought I would just take an opportunity up front to invite the audience to take out your phone, and if you would be obliged to connect with me by scanning the QR code, I would love that. I have actually really enjoyed my time in participating with the ALA in various ways over my 21 years with Robert Half. And as my bio said that Lorica actually read to you all, I started, my roots are in Columbus, Ohio, so definitely interacted with the chapter there. I've been in the Dallas-Fort Worth area now for the last 18 years of my career, so I have participated with the local chapters here and obviously now on the national level, including this webinar platform on this very, very topic here of compensation the last few years. So I'm very excited to be here again. And once again, if you'd be interested in connecting with me, I look forward to being able to connect with you after the webinar as well. So from a Robert Half standpoint, I think many of you probably know we've been tracking compensation and publishing our salary forecasts since 1950. We used to do it in paper, then we went to PDFs, and now the experience is completely online. And we include not only the guide, but we have a salary calculator, and it's easily customizable to your market. And this year, we've actually improved how we determine the salaries in the guide. We still use our real world salaries from all of the placements that we're making on a monthly basis. But we also factor in extensive third-party job posting data. We analyze that, and then we take that and look at the salary record for every role across each of the percentiles that are in the salary guide. And then we use our state-of-the-art AI to help ensure the highest degree of accuracy as possible for you all. We've had countless managers use our salary projections and our insights on employment trends to plan for their own hiring budgets, as well as to write job descriptions, create compensation packages, retain employees, and much more. Today, we're going to talk about a couple of different areas. So just to set the landscape here for you. Number one, we know companies need to stay up to date on hiring trends and continually need to be looking at it so that they can be sure that they're on the lookout for skilled talent throughout a year. So to help them do so, we're going to first delve into the market outlook and examine where it is heading, and we're going to include compensation and hiring trends. Then we're going to go more specifically into the current marketplace for the legal profession and include starting salaries, niche trends, and in-demand jobs. I'll also cover then trends and benefits and perks, and comparing not only what workers want, but what are employers offering. And then we'll take a look at how those benefits and those perks have shifted over time. And then we'll wrap up with a summary of some key takeaways today, and I'll answer any questions that you might have. So as Larica said, please feel free to keep the chat open. I'm also going to have a couple of poll questions throughout the presentation just to make this a little bit interactive. So if you'd be interested in participating, please do so. All right. So first, from a market outlook, we talk about national trends, and those are going to reflect what's happening around the country. Competition for skilled professionals continues to be a challenge for organizations, even as some take a measured approach to hiring as they monitor the economic environment. However, companies we know still need to hire and they still need to retain the best workers for critical roles to address business priorities, create a strong foundation for the future as well. And organizations most successfully at securing talent are those that improve their total compensation, offer remote and hybrid work options when possible, and strategically use contract talent. Now let's take a look at some facts and figures that are currently affecting the businesses across the US. So I'm going to have some updates for you here. On the screen, though, what I'm showing you is what the national unemployment rate was in October at 3.9%. Unemployment for workers with college degrees was even lower at 2.1%. I'll note that the Bureau of Labor Statistics will actually this Friday be sending out the newly updated unemployment rates for November, so you can be on the lookout for those. But we did have the new JOLTS report come out this morning, and so that's always a month in arrears. So what you're seeing here is in September, there was 9.6 million open jobs, and the quit rate was at 3.7 million. So the update this morning, there are 8.7 million jobs in October that were open, so it decreased. And the quit rate remained unchanged, mostly. It dropped a little bit to 3.6. So if there's anything that you're looking for from a historical standpoint, the BLS website is fantastic at that. I will note that October to November, the number and rate of hires was also essentially unchanged at 5.9 million or 3.7%. So a little bit in the details there on the numbers, but I think it's really important to level set so we can be reminded as to what's happening nationally. Now here, I wanted to include this graphic because it provides you the comparison to key legal roles with paralegals and legal assistants, which are the hybrid, or I should say legal assistants are more of that hybrid job role, just by definition of a paralegal and a legal secretary for this instance. So their unemployment came in at 1.2%, and for attorneys, 0.4%. So again, very astounding. We already have low unemployment numbers nationally, but then when you layer in our profession from a legal perspective, it's even lower. So this just continues to demonstrate there's still a very tight market on available talent that is without a job. And also with the lowered quit rate that I mentioned on the previous slide, this still just continues to demonstrate those looking to leave a job have dropped if they don't have a compelling reason. All right, so getting into some more statistics here. Employers, we're finding, when they're upfront about a role's salary range, this overall can improve their hiring prospects. So some survey data that we can share here. So 42% of workers say they expect to see a salary range in a job posting. And 57% say they would take themselves out of consideration if the employer doesn't provide it upon request. So here's an opportunity for the audience to participate if you're interested in the chat. And you can just put a yes or a no, but curious, how many of you do include salary ranges in your job postings today? You can even be more specific if you'd like on certain roles, maybe you do, and other roles you don't, but would love to hear from the audience. I will note there are certain states that do require by law that you include the salary range. And I believe we're at about 8 states now, but there are several states out there that are considering this to have a salary range transparency law. And even many posting platforms are requiring it now. So we know that this is a way to help close the gender pay gap. So that's why we're continuing to see that, and know eventually more states will take over that salary range transparency law. So just checking here in the chat. So thank you for the participation. So yes, especially after COVID, yes, but it is required. So somebody in a state where it's required, most of you are saying yes, especially for attorney roles, required with Indeed as an example of a platform. So I think there's only maybe one of you that has actually said no. So that's really great feedback to see that that's something that you all are particularly including right now. And as I said, this is a tool that you can use to help attract talent, since more and more are interested in seeing that. So you can see here that we've also found that many hiring managers say it helps their hiring prospects, right? So ultimately, 63% of those surveyed said it does help attract the best talent, and 60% said it gives their company a competitive edge when they're hiring. So, my follow-up question was going to be if anybody was looking to maybe change how they're currently doing that or what their policy is. But as I said, it looks like many of you are already doing this tactic and probably reaping the benefits of seeing some great talent. So, from a hiring market standpoint, we've talked briefly already, but it's a very candidate-friendly market. So with many more job openings, as I just said, the new rate that's out there with the 8.3 million, but many more job openings than there are job seekers. So the result is an environment where the vast majority of managers, in fact, 93%, say it's still difficult to find and hire skilled talent. So let's talk about here what is spurring hiring. And what we have seen is two things: growth and turnover. So 67% of managers have cited that their company growth is the reason that they're looking for that, which is great to hear, right? That we have 67% of the managers surveyed that they are growing. 44% cited it's because of employee turnover. So we've seen the quit rate come down, but it still has been much higher in the last 2 years. So another reason why we're seeing companies hiring. One thing I wanted to comment on here from a turnover standpoint is layoffs. I get a lot of questions about that. Now, most notably, layoffs have been seen in the technology industry, but that's really done little to deepen the candidate pool because we're still finding other employers of different size companies are quickly hiring those newly available workers. And in addition, companies are bringing in contract talent to alleviate any staffing or skills gaps for any high priority projects. They want to keep them on track. So one thing I want to make sure from a comparison here, so I said 93% said it's hard to find skilled talent. That's a national average across all industries. As it relates to legal managers, 95% say it's difficult to find skilled legal talent. So we continue to see it across the legal field as well. All right, so a little bit of a graph here. I want to talk you through this. This provides you the insight to what challenges employers are facing nationally across all industries. So we find something very similar for law firms, but I just wanted to take note, this is the national. So top to bottom, you can see what the most challenging aspect is to find talent. For law firm administrators and hiring managers, they're facing the number one, finding skilled talent with the required skills for complex practice areas. And number two is actually the third one on this list. But number two for legal professionals is finding, for legal hiring managers is finding legal professionals that are willing to come on site and work on site. So another opportunity I'd open up if you're willing to share, if you're seeing the same kind of challenges, or maybe if there's any other major challenges that you are facing on a regular basis to attract talent. So I'll keep that kind of open here as we continue the presentation going forward. So while salaries are expected to rise in 2024, the increases are likely to be more measured than what they have been in recent years. For some professionals, that might be a reason for us to look at other opportunities, right? This is not lost on hiring managers, many of whom continue to increase compensation to retain their staff and better compete for top talent in a tight market. So this just kind of gives you an idea, again, what companies are doing to attract and keep talent and the percentages based on the survey that we conducted. We have already seen in the news, right? Large law firms announcing salary increases, year-end bonus packages. For associates, we've seen that first-year associate now jump to $225,000 for the large law firms. So year-end packages are coming out, extra kickers are coming out for billable hours. And these really are all tactics currently to retain talent, but also to set the leverage of attracting talent in 2024. So we'll talk a little bit about how does everyone really compete in that space and what can you do, no matter what your size is, to ensure that you can attract talent. All right. So a question here. How many of you manage a team currently that includes remote, so 100% remote, or a hybrid worker or workers? We'll keep that plural. So a simple yes or no. And again, if you'd like to respond, if it's a specific staff that is remote, a specific staff that is hybrid, but I'm just curious to see how many of you are offering one of those two options. And I've already seen quite a few yeses coming in, so that's great to hear. So let's talk a little bit about the numbers here. 43% of managers find that if they can offer flexibility to that will keep their top performers on board, it's going to keep their existing staff, and it's going to keep them happy. And then 42% have lost tenured employees for the same reason, if they were not offering a flexible option. So many of you are saying, yes, 100% remote. We've got hybrid, remote, hybrid, and there's some that are 100% in the office. So quite the combination here is I'm just kind of scrolling through the chat, but a lot of you, which I'm very pleased to hear, are offering a hybrid or a remote option, just because we know talent is definitely looking for that, which we'll dive into a little bit more. Firms also have been offering that remote option to gain access to talent in other geographical areas, right? Outside maybe where their firm sits, so that's allowed them to tap into additional talent. One thing I will say, and I think based on the feedback from the audience in the chat, you already know this, but workplace flexibility is really important to consider because there's benefits both for that employee as well as for you and for your team. And of course, that includes work-life balance, avoiding burnout, improving employee morale, as well as engagement in the firm. And when it's easier for an employee to deal with the pressures on the home front, have a little bit of flexibility with their work schedule, then they're likely to be more productive when they're on the job, and they're less inclined to jump ship, if you will, for a little bit more money. All right, great participation again. Thank you, everyone. All right, so here are some more interesting findings from our recent surveys of remote versus in-person work. So 40% of companies consider candidates outside their market for those remote options, as I was just mentioning, but it's 40% that will tap into that other geographical talent. 61% of workers say they're more likely to apply for jobs that do offer some kind of remote option. So thinking about the talent challenge that we have out there, if you can offer some sort of remote or hybrid schedule, you're more likely to see more applicants. And then 80% said that they are willing to come into the office full time if they're offered a premium salary. Probably not any surprises there, but this is definitely straight from the employee's mouth, if you will, since we did do a survey in that area. Now here, I do want to just talk a minute and kind of how are the ways, if you will, that companies are navigating a complex and competitive hiring market. So we've seen many businesses, and I will note this is both law firms as well as corporations, are turning to this variable talent model by engaging short-term contract professionals, full-time engagement professionals, and or taking advantage of managed solutions. So each option can really help relieve talent shortages, if you will, in different ways. So I do just want to explore a little bit further here on what we mean by all of this. And also the aspect that this allows managers to scale staff for complex projects, right? Different methods that you can use for complex or heightened times, right? Crunch times, if you will. So contract professionals, that really comes into play for key initiatives, access to specialized skills, and to support your core staff during those crunch times, and also to help avoid burnout. The full-time engagement professional. So some firms aren't familiar with that term. Other companies might call it something else, but this is allowing you to bring on someone else's full-time employee on a contract basis or an interim basis. But it provides continuity to those projects. And that means a project that you need to have handled by the same person. It might be periodically or it might be long term, and you need an uninterrupted resource to assist you without turnover that maybe the contract employee wouldn't provide. This full-time engagement professional is often also a subject matter expert in the field or a niche practice area. And then lastly, with managed solutions, this is really a consulting team partnering with contract professionals. So it's kind of both, if you will, to manage staff and then complete what might be an enterprise level project for the company or the firm where you don't have the expertise or most likely the resources to actually execute on your own. So again, 3 different variable models that we see currently in the market to really address any candidate shortages. So the use of contract professionals has really been, if you will, the most common variable talent model that's out there. In fact, what we have found is 64% of employers are increasing their use of contract professionals in the current landscape. And this model, I mentioned this briefly, but it really allows an employer to ramp up quickly, to ramp down as well when they're using contract talent. And it doesn't impact their overall headcount. They also are typically available to start immediately as a contractor. So this opens up the doors to find even more junior level talent that's seeking to gain more experience. They can do administrative tasks, mundane, tasks, if you will, to free up your full-time employees' job responsibilities so that they can focus on more strategic items. All right, so another poll question, and this one is really near and dear to my heart because I have a lot of questions on this one quite often. But one thing that I'd like to ask is AI. Are you and your firm currently using AI? So you can say a simple yes or no. And if you would like to even add any commentary on how, that would be great as well. So I'll let you type in some responses as I go through some information here I wanted to share. But we know the use of generative AI can make some feel anxious, but we are finding that workers are feeling very optimistic about their skills and their career aspects when it comes to Gen AI. So according to a survey we recently conducted with more than 2,500 US workers, 41% believe generative AI will have a positive impact on their career. And then there was 14% who did worry that it would make their own skills obsolete. And then about 1 in 4 respondents feel that generative AI might not have any impact. So a little bit of a mixed response there, but still 41% feeling very optimistic. I'll note here that our research also found that workers say the greatest benefits from using Gen AI are automating time-consuming tasks, increasing efficiency and productivity. So we know that many companies are going to continue to leverage generative AI and see an upside to it in the workplace. And so our survey, an actual separate survey that we did, we found that for legal, the top ways in which AI is being used is to streamline doc review, for consulting research and analysis, and then drafting documents. All right, so now's the opportunity. I'm gonna walk through some of the chat responses. So it looks like we're being cautious in how we implement it in the firm. Absolutely, 100% agree with you. Writing job descriptions and employee ads, yes, we definitely have seen that. Somewhat, no, I see some no's not using it yet. Communications department using it. There are several no's not using it yet. So that's, yeah, we have a little bit of a different mixed response there. So As I mentioned, you can think about some of the ways that we're seeing specific legal responses of how they can use Gen AI in the future. But we know that one's not going away. We know it's ever evolving. And as mentioned, we do know that it needs to be monitored and how it's implemented before we move forward and just immediately implement it in the legal field. All right, so I'm going to transition now to be more specific across the board from a legal perspective. It has returned, yes, legal hiring, it has returned to pre-pandemic levels with demand for specialized expertise driving much of the activity. So in particular, we've seen corporate legal departments as well as small to mid-sized law firms seeking skilled professionals really in that 3 to 7 year range. So having some experience, but again, 3 to 7, and that's really been across the board for a wide variety of different roles. Legal professionals are trying to attain better work-life balance through remote work options or hybrid, as we've talked about. Although we have seen an uptick in employers wanting full in office. So I was really pleased to see some of the responses in the chat on how many of you are offering remote as well as hybrid. From a Robert Half recruiter perspective, we can actually report that it has contributed to positions being left unstaffed when there isn't that option presented. And we've also seen employee attrition and competition for expertise from law firms and corporate legal departments increasing their reliance on using those contract professionals, as I mentioned, because those positions are going unfilled. All right, so let's dive in. I'm going to walk through a couple of different slides here to give you a perspective on some of those trends. So first, I'll mention law firms of all sizes. We have continued to see hiring from an attorney/lawyer standpoint, paralegals within niche or particular practice areas, and legal assistants, that hybrid duty role that I mentioned previously. But predominantly where we've seen the largest increase, it's been in litigation and partially also a backlog of court cases in that space. So legal professionals with civil, class action, commercial litigation. We've also seen insurance defense and personal injury. And we do not anticipate that to change for 2024 and beyond. A few of the other hot practice areas that we've also seen is family law and estate planning. And I will say this, we have had fewer candidates that have been as interested in that area, hence why we realize that the law firms are also having some challenges hiring in that space. All right, so when recruiting, we have seen smaller firms are emphasizing their positive work culture. So small and mid-sized firms are doing much of the hiring. Probably if you can take a gander of all those postings out there, I know someone mentioned using Indeed, you can definitely see the wide variety of firms that are out there, but we particularly do see the small and mid-sized firms are still in that space of hiring. And they might have a difficulty, right, of offering the above market salaries that the larger firms are offering that I've just talked about previously. But to compete, the smaller firms are really emphasizing that hybrid work option. We're also going to talk about benefits and perks here in a little bit of a minute, but providing a better work-life balance and a family-like atmosphere and opportunities to grow within the firm are helping those smaller firms compete and hire. I know a couple of you mentioned that you agree on the shortage of family and estate planning and have some openings right now. So something that we're glad to hear that, the pain point for you is, a reality of so many others out there as well. All right, diving in here now, another one that I wanted to talk about. So managers are increasing salaries for professionals with the following in-demand skills. And this is based on our survey data. So 42% of managers said they would up the salary for leadership and management experience, 41% for research and information analysis skills, and then you can see here 37% for advanced tech, rounded out by client management, and then A&I machine learning. So again, this is what managers are saying they are looking for, and they would increase salaries. And we think about the landscape of technology. We just talked a little bit about AI. It continues, though, to change how it's impacting legal. There's new platforms coming out all the time. So hence why we do understand, right, and not surprised that AI, machine learning, and tech skills in general are valued at a premium. In addition, so those other points that we've listed here, firms are pressured to really meet the growing demands of their clients while they're also leading and managing a different generation than what they used to be managing. So we are ushering in here kind of Gen Y and Gen Z. And so that's why we're looking from a standpoint of that leadership and management experience is a premium price. All right. And then another one here that we wanted to talk through. So legal teams, we know, have had heavier workloads as well, particularly this last year. But how are they managing? How are they doing it? How are they getting it done? So first of all, to attract the top talent, managers are offering flexibility with daily schedules. So that's not just about remote, that's not just about hybrid, but it's also about kind of what I'll say is clock in or clock out. We've heard of window work before, but just flexibility in general with daily schedules. And then, of course, other perks that will overall improve work-life balance is another way for recruitment. Teams are leveraging technology so that they can achieve greater efficiencies with those heavier workloads. And then managers are also hiring contract professionals, as we've mentioned, just to bridge any of those gaps that they might have in their existing team. So in law firms, I'm going to walk through two slides here to give you some comparisons of law firms versus corporations. So in law firms, these are the positions that are most used for contract talent, or where we're seeing contract talent being brought in, if said differently. So almost 50% for attorney roles, followed by a legal specialist, or this could be a SME, if you will, at 43%. And then you can round out the rest here from support and administration, as well as research and analysis. So by comparison, we thought it would be valuable to show you from a corporate standpoint, what are they bringing in contract talent to do? And it's really pretty flat if you look at the numbers here, but 38% in litigation support and e-discovery is the greatest area where, again, legal departments are using contract talent, followed by in-house counsel, so other attorneys or lawyers. Those typically are also SMEs in a particular area of corporate transactional work that they don't have in-house, why they're bringing that contract talent in, and then followed by support and lease administration. One thing I did want to point out here is the legal operations role. That is one that we do anticipate will continue to grow. Many of you and your firms might be partnering not only with general counsels and in-house counsels, but CLOs, chief legal officers. So that legal operations role, not all companies have it yet. So that's why we have seen many start to bring it in as a contract resource. I thought it would also be very helpful to share from our salary guide perspective, what are those in-demand roles, of course, as well as the industries that we see the most eager to hire legal professionals. So financial industry here, I feel like that's a little bit obvious maybe for the economic climate that we're in and starting to drill into more of the compliance factors that are out there in the financial landscape, but also healthcare and manufacturing, specifically US-based companies. We continue to see a spike for those roles and for those companies to continue to hire. And this again is in our 2024 salary guide. So this is projecting going into next year that this will continue to be a hot ticket area. And then based on our firsthand knowledge of the labor market conditions and trends and the recruitment and the staffing that we're doing, the roles that are listed here are the most in-demand jobs in the legal field, as well as for my survey data. So contracts managers, along with in-house counsels and paralegals, legal assistants, and litigation support are all hot topics. And someone did enter that struggling for coverage attorneys and the 3 to 5 year associate ranks, definitely hear that as well. So this is just kind of a broad stroke. This isn't going deep into particular practice areas, but we wanted to make sure that we shared so you had an idea from an industry and then top roles perspectives, what are the most in demand. Now we've already talked about it, right? These, hiring of legal professionals isn't always easy. It is very much a candidate market, as we've talked about. And there's definitely things that you can do to continue to help you drive and attract talent. And I would say, before we dive into some of the perks and the benefits, but we want to talk about using multiple platforms that cater to professional legal candidates and to specifically legal candidates. So advertising in as many platforms as possible, again, for that professional level, partnering with the recruiting firm, along with using your network to help bridge the gap, are all ways in which you can increase your candidate acquisition. I know the ALA has a large group and a large chapter, by location. And so ensuring you're tapping into your network there as well. And then some feedback from our team and our recruiters, some other positions that they're seeing that are maybe a little bit more, two of these I would say are more unique, but we have seen ethics and corporate governance positions growing. And this is particularly because of the ESG initiatives. And then you think about data privacy concerns in the world. I'll take a quick sip here. A lot of talking. Excuse me. Gracious. Sorry, everyone. The data privacy concerns. It's a lot of talking that I'm doing here. Forgive me 1 second. I'm going to put you on mute so I can take a quick cough. All right, trying to get my voice back, everyone. My apologies for that. But data privacy definitely also continues to be a growing concern with cyber attacks, whether that's on the corporate landscape or even in the law firm space. And these roles are often a different level of candidate, and they are also fewer and farther between. So you think about the expertise that they bring to the table, you are definitely probably not posting and having 50 applicants across the board for those types of roles. And I would love it if anybody wants to type in anything else in the chat that maybe you're seeing. Based on the legal market, though, those are a couple of the areas, as well as labor and employment and litigation. We remain very busy in those spaces and getting a lot of requests for that type of talent. So just double checking. I haven't seen anybody else drop anything else in, and making sure I haven't missed anything on any questions, but it looks like we're good. So we're going to flow into some perks and benefits information for everybody. All right. So I think the data that I'm going to walk through next is candidly probably not surprising, but there is one particular thing that we've done a little bit different this year in our 2024 salary guide that I think is unique. But we're finding skilled professionals are not only looking at their base salary. They do want it to be in line, of course, with firms and what they're offering and be competitive, but they want to have choices in their benefits and their perks and see those just as equally as competitive. So as we dive in here, this first graph, I'm going to walk you through here what you're seeing, but I'm going to call it a gold color. On the bottom side, that is what employers are currently providing. So the teal color is what workers want. All right, so not a surprise that workers want health insurance, retirement saving plans, paid time off as top benefits, and employers are providing that. And this does rank from top to bottom what employers are providing most of. So across the board, pretty strong, if you will. And maybe you find this surprising that some candidates aren't as interested in leave of absence or dental insurance. It doesn't mean they're not interested in it. We're just showing you on this current slide what your, from an employer standpoint, are providing and what workers are saying they want. Now let's move to our next one here. And these are the perks. So what are the perks that workers want most? So that's the teal color. Just keep that in mind. Flexible work, remote work, and remote work business allowances. Those are the three highest areas that a candidate is looking at when they're making a decision to accept an offer. So as an employer, those are great perks to consider to attract as well as retain any talent. One thing I wanted to point out, talk about parental leave for a minute. So the Wall Street Journal actually has a great visual on a parental leave, kind of, if you will, comparing that perk to a leave of absence for both men and women. And they actually categorized it from 2018 all the way to 2023 and how it's changed. And it is Interesting, right, to see the influx of employees taking advantage of those perks, in part due to the increase in the birth rate in the last 2 years. And a lot of state laws have passed that are requiring it. And then additionally, there's a culture change to support both women, mothers, and fathers when taking leave. So, pretty predominant thing that has changed here over the last 4 years that I wanted to make sure that I pointed out. All right, another chart here. So as we look at this, this is the one that I really love that's a little bit different in our 2024 salary guide this year. And this is looking at how many organizations offered that certain benefit in 2019. So that's on the left in the gold color. And then how many are offering that in 2023 in the teal on the right. So the largest changes have been in the employee assistance programs and that leave of absence programs that I just mentioned. But regardless, you can see that there's been an increase in all categories over the last 4 years. So as we mentioned, this is a great way to attract talent and retain talent, but employers have definitely responded and continued to increase, what are the benefits that they're offering. And then the same thing here goes for what's changed with perks over the last 4 years. So again, 2019 is on the left and 2023 on the right. Some significant changes here is with the remote work options, the flexible work schedules, paid time off for volunteering, and of course, the paid time off for parental leave, as we've talked about. I just love this. I love like how we've evolved. I love what we've done and how we've shown and demonstrated from a legal profession standpoint what we're doing for our employees, as well as this is across the board for all industries. We've continued to see benefits and perks adjust over the last 4 years. All right, well, I appreciate everyone sticking with me here. I apologize for my little tickle there, but we've reached kind of the main end here of the presentation, but I do want to make sure I go back for any Q&A. But before I do that, a few things. One, thank you again for being here. And I thought I would just kind of give you some high-level takeaways from the presentation and maybe ponder as you've spent time with us today. So today's workers' choices, as we have said, they have choices. It's changed, and they're very much still kind of had the candidate-friendly landscape we've talked about. So to attract and retain talent, employers will need to sweeten that compensation package. You can utilize resources such as our salary guide to benchmark the latest salary ranges. And if you aren't familiar with the salary guide, it will give you national figures, but you can also drill down by local market so you can specifically know from a recruitment and compensation standpoint what's happening in your own backyard. You can also consider having those signing and retention bonuses. But don't forget about the pay transparency that we talked about. As I mentioned, most of you in the chat said that you were already doing that upfront, providing salary ranges, and that also improves your overall hiring prospects and candidate acquisition. Even as employers want workers back in the office full time, still offering some sort of flexibility is really important, and that's what job seekers are seeking. And top talent on their list, we've said flexible work arrangements, including hybrid and/or remote, as well as flexible scheduling. And flexibility is good, not just for workers, but for employers too. That's why more and more companies are adopting a variable talent model. They're using contract workers, full-time engagement professionals, managed services, all ways to bolster their capabilities within the firm. And lastly, benefits and perks. They are going to continue to evolve, and employers need to stay on top of those trends to remain competitive, not only in times of low employment, but especially when recruiting top talent in a tight market. And as I mentioned, you'll be able to dive in a little bit further if you want some more information on any of us in our salary guide. So this is an opportunity for you to take out your phone. You can scan to download the 2024 Robert Half Salary Guide right now. It also includes a salary calculator, and there's additional hiring and managing tips on the website as well. So with that, I think, Larica, we are open to any questions that might be out there. I don't know if I've missed any that were in the chat, but any questions that we might have. And yes,
Certainly.
I did just see one on the present. I saw the last one in there, and we are definitely going to supply the deck to everybody as well.
Yes, we will, and I'll actually post that link into the chat pod as well. But thank you, Jamie. We do have a few questions here, starting with Kimberly asked, remote business allowances. Does that mean things like the company paying for home office equipment like printers, etc.?
So we've seen a couple of different, and great question, Kimberly. We've seen a couple of different things out there. Some companies will do a stipend, a quarterly stipend. I've even seen some companies do a monthly, but as a set balance that then the employee can use it how they see fit. So it's not that you're necessarily designating it to a printer or to internet usage or I need a new headset or my keyboard, it's however they see fit to use it. And that has honestly been the most common now that we're post COVID is a standard set allowance, whether that's monthly or quarterly, as I mentioned. When we first were in the pandemic, there were some companies and firms that were specifically saying, you're right, to do your job, you need a better printer. You're right, to do your job, you need X, Y, and Z. And so they would allocate certain funds, but that's less and less more that we see that.
Perfect. Thank you. And the next question, can you talk a little about the current labor shortage and what's causing it?
Sure, of course. Well, workforce participation remains below pre-pandemic levels. And so the rate also has declined steadily since really the start of the century. And it was at 67%, and today it's at 63% participation. So even if every unemployed person in the country found a job, the US would still have millions of unstaffed positions. So that's really the reason for this lower participation rate range from a state of early retirement during the pandemic, a lack of affordable childcare, budgets changing for commute time. So there's a couple of other factors that go into that declining aspect of the labor shortage. Hopefully that answers the question.
Perfect. Thank you. Also, how much do you think AI will change the workplace?
You know, I think it will change it quite a bit, but we're just on the cusp of it. I've done some other webinars and interviews in this space, and despite all the talk about AI replacing humans, I really believe that technology will mostly complement our jobs. And I did mention this, like make it more efficient, streamline processes, make us be able to work on more strategic items, and as well be more creative and just opening up our bandwidth altogether. I do not think it's going to make our jobs obsolete, but it's coming fast and furious, and it's something that we should look to embrace, put some guardrails on it, but look to embrace it and see how it can benefit us to be more efficient in the legal profession.
Perfect. Thank you. And I received a private response. Thank you so much for the work you've done on this webinar. It's very informative. So I just wanted to share that comment with you. And then another question. I'm having a tough time finding skilled talent. Does Robert Half run into the same hiring challenges?
Uh, and many of you tapped in some other examples of specific roles. So as I mentioned in the front end, I've been with the company 21 years, and you have to keep in mind, we are hiring talent solution professionals to focus on finding skilled talent. And that's all they're doing every minute of every day, which where you're definitely going to have more challenges because you have a full-time job, plus you're probably looking for staff. And we hire individuals with a legal background. We have many platforms and organizations that we partner with to find talent, including we have a database that we have built over 75 years of candidates that are both local, to the areas we work in, as well as national job seekers, right? Again, open to that remote work. And in fact, we have over 1 million legal candidates in our database. And then across all of our company, we have 33 million candidates across our specialties. So while we definitely might have challenges, we're focused differently on this 24/7, and should be able to uncover top talent for you. And I'm not talking, that means that it's 20, 30 candidates, but being very specific and pointed on finding you the best talent.
Thank you. And then we have, there is another comment. Oh, that one did go to everyone, the comment in the chat pod. And then the question is, which do you think is a better work arrangement, 100% remote or hybrid?
Well, both are good, right? There's a different reason for both, and you have to assess your team. You have to assess the individual, and honestly, like what is going to make them be the most productive? What is their personal situation, and then taking that into consideration. Will they be able to perform in a hybrid or in a remote standpoint? And does it lend itself to support your team's productivity? And we find, it's a little bit different probably in our world, but we have the ability to, meet with a client in the morning, sit down for coffee, and then go into the office and work with our team, and maybe then head out early and on the way home meet another client before we get home. So whatever works best for your team. And I also will take into consideration, are they a new employee? Are they a tenured employee? Because a newer employee, maybe it's 100% on site with some hybrid to start, and then earning that right to go to remote after they've been fully trained and are up and running. So just be assessing the situation and taking into consideration each employee, their preferences, as well as the team's productivity will be the best fit for work arrangements for you and your firm.
Perfect. And we have one more question here. Looking at the salary tables, I'd love to have highly skilled and experienced candidates, but can only afford ones in the low range. Any advice?
Yeah. And I will say, for those of you that maybe this person's, kind of looking at the salary guide, we have the 25th, 50th, and the 75th percentiles. So looking for somebody that has all those complex skills, but maybe their salary range aligns differently. Hire for potential. Where you can, consider entry level workers, as you can upskill them by professional development, which, by the way, is another thing that talent is looking for. They're looking for opportunity for professional development, for training, for mentorship. And if you can find an individual that's eager to learn, they do possess the right soft skills, the right education, they can learn on the job. And so, take a leap of faith where you can and invest in that potential. And what you will find is that individual is typically very well invested in you and what you're giving to them, and they're willing to stay for that opportunity to grow and learn. So that would be my advice.
Thank you, Jamie. That is all the questions we have for today.
Well, thank you, Larica, and I just want to say thank you to the ALA. As I said, I've loved my longstanding partnership with the ALA. Great to spend time with all of you today. Thank you for your participation and your questions, and taking time out of your day. I appreciate it. So back to you, Larica.
Yes, and same. Thank you for presenting today, Jamie. Thank you again to our sponsor, Robert Half, and thank you all for attending.